Hello everybody! Today we are going to be talking about how to grow a cut flower garden. So this has really become very popular. It's been popular for a very long time, but as more and more people get into gardening, you want to experience maybe a lot of those things indoors. And so by growing plants that allow you to cut the flowers and bring them inside, that lasts for a period of time, and that ranges anywhere from, it could range from as little as 3 or 4 days, in a vase of water to, 10 to 15 days. So you've got a huge diversity in different types of flowers. And there's nothing more enjoyable than growing a plant that produces something that you can bring indoors and enjoy, whether it's fragrance or just color or look or decor. It's just a lot of fun, and it's something that you can do throughout the entire year. So that's what's really cool about this, about growing a cut flower garden, is there's a lot of diversity in plants, from sun to shade. There's also a lot of different things that you can do as far as seasonality and different types of greenery, to blooms, to fillers, to lacy plants. There's just a huge plethora of different types of plants, and I won't be able to get to all of them. I am going to show you a lot of plants that you can use for your flower arrangements, whether you're creating a bouquet or a vase or whatever it might be. This hopefully will help you kind of get inspired and get some ideas on how to grow a cut flower garden. Really popular these days. And it's really easy to do. And there's a lot of these plants that come back year after year, from shrubs to perennials to even annuals. And so we're going to show a bunch of those, and I'll talk about a lot of different things here. I think the most important thing to always consider whenever starting a new garden, or even anything that we do in our garden, is to take a little bit of time to plan. I always talk about it whenever I'm talking about a vegetable garden, a cut flower garden, landscape design, anything like that. Just take a little bit of time to do a little bit of planning, a little bit of thought process to kind of see what it is that you might want to grow and do, and what your ideas are. I mean, when customers come into our garden center and ask questions, we're always going to have questions back. And so having some of those answers really helps. Is it sun? Is it shade? So you can see that picture up there where you can see that, landscape there, that blank slate. You got some shade and you got some sun. We need to know where those are and where you're going to be planting. And also just making a list of some of your favorite plants, maybe some of your favorite colors. Maybe you don't like oranges, you just like the blues and the yellows, or the pinks and the reds. There's lots and lots of different color choices out there and color palettes, and having that information really helps us answer your questions, because we're going to have lots of questions for you. So do a little bit of pre-planning, a little bit of thought process, thinking about your sun and shade. If you've got both, that's great, because there's lots of great cut flowers that you can grow in both sun and shade. Also consider, that's why I put this picture of this landscape in here, just consider putting cut flower plants throughout your landscape. It doesn't have to be a specific garden set up for cut flower garden. So you can do that. You can develop just one area and say, this is going to be my cut flower garden. So it's going to come in and out. It's going to have ebb and flows. And that's something that to realize as well, is a lot of your plants that are used for cut flowers, have seasonality and bloom at certain times of the year. And that's what you want, so that you get that full season of blooms. But also consider just spreading them around your landscape. Incorporate them into your landscape. If you've got a really nice kind of setup landscape, but you've got some pockets and holes that you can add to, or maybe you can expand some bed space to add some of these plants. I mean, you think about hydrangeas. Hydrangeas are great. They're great in the landscape. They're one of my favorite landscape plants. They're also one of the best cut flower plants. So you can have these plants spread out throughout your landscape, or you can devote a space to specifically cut flowers. So just a little bit of planning. A couple tips before we get started is, one, to layer your garden. So if you're doing a specific space, or even if you're incorporating them into the landscape, it's always important to understand your view into the garden so that you can see that tiered effect. And so that's why I have that image over there of all of those great cut flowers, or just a pretty perennial section of somebody's yard there. But you can see the tiers, so you get to see all the colors as the heights of the plants get bigger and bigger. And that's important when we're talking about cut flowers, because you need to know what's in bloom and when it's blooming and when it's about to bloom, because certain flowers you might want to cut a little bit earlier because it allows them to open. I always think about lilies. A lot of times by the time we get to a lily or even like a daffodil, to plant it or to put it in a vase, to use in a cut flower arrangement, it might be past its prime a little bit. And so it's good to always kind of be able to see into your garden and see all of the different types of flowers that are coming and going, so that you can work around it and you can create your bouquets and your flower arrangements according to when they're blooming. Also, this is my number one tip, is visit your local garden center as frequently as you can. I see Gina, hello. She's in Huntsville, Alabama, so she doesn't live in Hampton Roads. So definitely she's gonna have to go to her local garden center because they're the best. They're gonna know what plants do well in your local areas. So you definitely want to visit your local garden centers, and you want to do it pretty frequently. I mean, almost monthly is what I recommend. And that's not really a sales pitch. That's not to say, we want you to come in the store more. We do, of course. But what you're going to experience when you come in frequently, once a month is what I kind of recommend, once a month, maybe twice a month. Then what you will see is you will get the different types of plants that will help you bloom throughout the season. Because here's how the garden center industry works, right? We're going to get plants in. We're either going to grow plants for specific seasons or we're going to buy plants in for specific seasons. And all growers are growing plants for that season. I always think of mums. A lot of people come in and ask for a mum in the spring. Well, it's going to be very difficult to find mums in the spring because they're just green. And a lot of garden centers don't have space to just put green plants out all the time. Now, you could say, well, boxwoods and shrubs like that and azaleas, they have their certain times, but you always have them, and that's true. But in the perennials and the annuals world, we're always going to try and put things out that have blooms on them. And so something like a mum, we're only going to carry in the fall season as they approach bloom time and as they're actually blooming. So if you want asters, great cut flower, you're going to have to get them in the fall because that's when they start to bloom. So that's why I say my number one tip is to come in and frequent your garden centers once a month or so that you can get that full season of bloom. So I will say this, and I hate to say this, but weekend warriors, you can get a flower garden, you can get a cut flower garden built pretty quickly, and you can incorporate these plants in your landscape, and you can do it over a weekend, but you're gonna have just a little bit of a seasonality issue where you're gonna, what you plant, like if you came in and you did this in the spring or in the early, or I should say, late spring, early summer, you're gonna get a different group of plants and you're gonna have plants that bloom in a specific time period. Now, there are plants that of course bloom a little bit more frequently, and those are great, and we'll talk about some of those. But that is my number one tip. Visit your garden centers frequently because you will get that full season of bloom color and full season of use of these cut flowers when you shop at your garden centers throughout the year, and just slowly but surely build your cut flower garden. Number one tip. Number two, or I should say number three really, is get yourself a nice pair of pruners. Because trust me, when you are working in a cut flower garden, you're gonna need a pair of pruners. Now, of course, I carry my Felcos with me at all time, and there's something that, is a little bit of a pricey pruner, but I know that they're gonna last and they're always gonna be there for me. So I love my Felcos, and they work great, and they always work great. But, really doesn't matter. What the most important thing is that you have a good pair of bypass pruners. And we've got a great collection here. We've got tons of different types of pruners because everybody likes something different. From the little tiny dram with the little point, so almost like a scissors. All of your pruners should be bypass pruners when we're working in the cut flowers, because the cut flowers, you always want to have a nice, fresh, clean cut. The anvil pruners are smashing cut. What that means is an anvil pruner has basically like an anvil. Think of the cartoons back in the day. And then you have the blade that comes and smashes half of the stem and it cuts half of it. But with a bypass pruner, like a pair of scissors, you're gonna cut and make a nice clean cut. So we've got lots of different ones. These little tiny small ones, which are great for getting into the plants. We've also got these really nice ones from Bergen & Ball that are very similar to Felcos. Really, really nice, can cut into some thicker wood if need be. You might even need a pair of floral shears. Floral shears are just like a kitchen shear, real simple. It's got, just a basic kind of slightly serrated edge, but just a nice kind of strong pair of scissors. Those might come in handy. I love these houseplant pruners. this beveled edge here. So it's got this kind of beveled edge, so when you can go into a plant, just kind of parts your plant so you can get in there. Really good for when you're cutting like fronds of ferns and different types of things like that for greenery. This is a great one, but you don't need all of them. You can even just get a cheap pair of inexpensive pruners. I like these because of the bright color handles, so I've got a couple pairs of these because sometimes I leave them outside. I always keep my Felcos on me, but sometimes when I'm just kind of out working in the yard and I just grab a pair of pruners, sometimes I grab these, and if I happen to leave them out, I'm not going to lose a whole lot of money if they rust on me or they fall apart on me. So I always like to have a lot of different types of pruners and different types to use for different types of scenarios and different types of uses, whether I'm harvesting my vegetable garden or cutting my cut flowers. But if you are really getting into it, I definitely suggest, investing in a really, really nice pair of pruners that are something that you might keep handy with you as you go throughout the season as you're cutting your flowers. So that's a really, really good tip, is to make sure to get a nice pair of pruners. So as I mentioned, nothing better than bringing in these flowers into your home. They make great gifts, these flowers do, these plants do. A lot of us give gifts of a flower arrangement that last a week or two. But to give somebody the gift of a flower that will keep blooming for them and something that they can cut year after year, I always think of Mother's Day or Valentine's Day or all of these different types of holidays where we're celebrating somebody else. Give them something that maybe blooms at that time. I planted, plants for my kids so that when they bloom, I know, hey, that's what I planted for my kids. And so I always have that there. And it's the same for Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Father's Day. I always think of like Japanese maples. So these plants can have significant meaning and can give you that value year after year after year. And so they make great gifts. So let's talk about some of these plants because there's a ton of different types of plants. Let's first talk about sun plants. I'm going to show you plants. I'm not going to really make a list or anything. I'm going to kind of show you some things that I grabbed. The list is very, very long. There are tons and tons of different types of plants that you can use for a cut flower garden. I think for sun plants, some of the things that I always think of is I kind of go down the order, the line, and I kind of say, okay, what are my mainstays, my shrubs? So I think of roses and gardenias, and forsythia is another good one. Those are some of the best shrubs for cut flowers, cut stems, but you can even use trees. You think of like a cherry tree or the flowering cherry trees or the flowering plum trees. Those are great as those buds swell. You can cut off a branch, bring it in, make a little floral arrangement, and most of those blooms will open up. Just like forsythia. I love to use forsythia early in the season when nothing's really blooming. I can go and see those buds starting to crack on that branch, and I can put a bunch of branches into a vase, and all those blooms open up inside, and it makes for a great show. So think about all of your shrubs. There's a huge, huge assortment. Of course, there's more than just those, but those are three that come to my mind. Are your roses, gardenias for fragrance, forsythia for bloom early in the season, and there's many, many more. And then I kind of say, okay, what are my mainstay perennials? What are some of my favorite perennials that I can use for cut flowers? And things that bloom at different times or throughout the season really help. And I love, daylilies are a great one. Alstroemeria, I'll show you some of these here in just a second. Black-eyed Susan is a good one. Coreopsis, salvias, lilies, asters, as I mentioned earlier, Crocosmia, the list goes on and on. I mean, there's a huge list, and I've got a bunch of plants here I'm going to show you. And then, of course, there's even annuals that you can plant. I love Gomphrena is a great one for the sun. It's super, super easy to grow and gets a fairly good size. I'll show you that here in a second. And dahlias are another good one. Dahlias, there's perennial dahlias that come back year after year, and there's your annual dahlias. So there's lots and lots of choices there. And the dahlias, zinnias are another good one. Snapdragons are a great cut flower. And again, there's all seasonalities in between. So sometimes you need to add a little bit of annual color to get those cut flowers, but sometimes you'll get them year after year with your perennials and your shrubs. And so again, kind of that thought process, that planning of saying, okay, in the sun, I've got full sun, I'm going to plant some shrubs that I need that are usually going to be bigger too. So those are going to be kind of my background plants, my bigger plants. And then I'll stage down into some perennials. Perennials, vary in size. Some of the salvias getting 3 to 4 feet tall. Baptisia is another good one. I mean, there's just a huge, huge list. And I, of course, couldn't go through all of them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you some of them. But tier down, maybe even to save some space for some annual plants in the front that you can change out throughout the season. Whether it's snapdragons in the cool weather, or it's dahlias in the summer, or zinnias, or any of those. So there's lots and lots of choices out there. But let me show you some of my favorite sun plants. Of course, love roses. Roses are absolutely amazing, and here's just a gorgeous one. So this one's called, let's see, we carry a lot of the hassle-free roses. So you're gonna see them in these red pots. And what that means is a hassle-free rose is not gonna be specifically completely disease and insect resistant, but it means that they're proven to be some of the best varieties. And so this is gold struck. So this is a really pretty, I think this is a floribunda, let's see. Grandiflora, sorry. So it's a grandiflora. So there's a lot of different types of roses out there. And so I'm not going to do a whole rose discussion, but you got grandifloras, floribundas, hybrid teas. Hybrid teas are probably one of the most popular because you get that true perfect long stem. But grandifloras are very similar too. Slightly different rose type, petal look. But these are a gorgeous yellow. I know you probably can't quite see it on the camera, but they're actually tinged on the edge with a little bit of orange. Really nice rose. Let's see. Pretty good fragrance, a little bit of a sweet fragrance, but lots and lots of rose choices. And it doesn't have to be a long stem rose. There's a lot of really easy roses to grow, like the knockout roses or the carpet roses, and they grow in lots of different sizes. And even those shrub roses, I kind of classify them as shrub roses. So I kind of say you got your long stem roses, and then you got your shrub roses. And shrub roses are super easy because they don't create a seed. So long stem roses, you got to cut. So what makes it one of the best ideal cut flowers is you got to prune it in order for it to flower. And in fact, the deeper that you cut down in your rose, the longer stem you get for your flower arrangements, but also the better the bloom set that comes after that. Now, shrub roses don't have to be pruned. They have a seed that is basically not going to become viable, and so it stops going into seed production, goes back into bloom. So you don't have to prune as much, but you get a little bit of smaller blooms, but you get a lot more of them, and you get the ease and the care and the low maintenance that you don't have to worry about with a long stem rose. But shrub roses are a great option as well. And there's a huge diversity in them. As I mentioned, kind of from those carpet roses that I absolutely love. Carpet roses are really nice because they stay kind of low, but then you've got your knockout roses that can get pretty good size, but you get all these different colors. You get reds and pinks and yellows. There's a huge diversity in the long stem roses as well. But roses are a really, really good one. Let's see, what else do I have? I've got gardenias. I'll show you, I think I grabbed the one that's got the little tiny bloom on it. But gardenias are a great one. I love these flowers. Of course, the fragrance is absolutely amazing, but even for, if I'm having a party or something like that, I might just go pluck off some gardenia flowers and just lay them in a bowl of water, just a nice glass bowl of water, and let them float there, and that fragrance can fill the room. It's absolutely amazing. And then when your gardenia bush blows up and has tons and tons of gardenia blooms, then you might go in and cut. You've got that great dark green glossy foliage, really, really nice. And of course, you can enjoy the fragrance outside. I love planting these near a porch or patio, somewhere that I can enjoy the bloom smell when they're blooming. But also, you can plant them out in the landscape somewhere that might be further away, and you can use it as a cut flower to bring that fragrance inside. So gardenias are a really great choice. And of course, again, seasonality. Check out your garden center. I'm probably going to say it 100 times. Keep checking out your garden center, because like forsythia, we might have a couple left, but forsythia we're really only going to carry in the spring, early spring when it's blooming. So that's a good one. And there's more and more shrub options, I'm sure, out there. But I want to kind of talk about perennials, and perennials is going to take me a minute, because perennials, I think, are one of the biggest groups of plants, one of the most diverse groups of plants that add lots of value, and especially to a cut flower garden, they add tons of value. So let me just kind of grab some things as I see them. Of course, Agapanthus I see right here. Agapanthus is a great one. You see these a lot in like the California area. Lots and lots of long stems that come out as grassy foliage. So longer the stem, the easier it is for a cut flower. Not to say that you can't use shorter stem, for cut flowers, but long stem plants that have these long shoots with flowers on top are great. And Agapanthus is awesome because you get all of these little buds in there. Let me see if I can get it to zoom in on that. So you see those buds on the center in there? They're not even open yet. So you can get a long bloom time out of these, and they make a great cut flower for that exact reason. And they come typically in about 2 colors, which is this kind of lavender and then also white. Let me see if I can get this white one. Here we go. So then they also come in white. So it kind of reminds me of almost like an allium. And I'll talk about bulbs here in a minute. But a really pretty kind of lily kind of bloom, really, really nice and pretty easy to grow. You know, love full sun, don't get super, super big. Most of the ones that we carry nowadays are gonna be some of your smaller sized Agapanthus, whereas some of the original Agapanthus got huge, huge spikes. They were almost kind of unmanageable. But these are nice and small. This one's called actually Baby Pete, which is one of the most popular, smaller foliage, smaller bloom spikes, which make them a little bit easier to work into the landscape or into a cut flower garden. And this one's called Double Diamond. Really, really pretty, pure white blooms on that nice long green stem. So really, really great cut flower. Agapanthus is an awesome, awesome choice. Let's see. All right, so let me keep looking. Now, of course, when you're looking at the garden center, you might not see plants with any blooms on them, but doesn't mean that it's not a good blooming plant. Black-eyed Susan, this is one of my all-time favorites. It's awesome. You get blooms all summer long. Really, really easy to grow. You know, pretty drought tolerant, but this is a lot of times what they look like in the garden center. You rarely see black-eyed Susans blooming. You might see them in the summertime, but they get picked up fairly quickly because they're very, very popular. And of course, I think this is the original. This is Goldstrom. So this is an awesome, awesome black-eyed Susan. Very easy to grow, and they make great cut flowers. And even when the blooms are done and you get that little kind of brown, that black eye that's still sitting on there, they're great little dried up flowers too. So Black-Eyed Susan is a great choice, but sometimes you got to look a little bit farther. I know I mentioned that, our old adage of no bloom, no room. If there's not blooms on it, usually we don't sell it. But Black-Eyed Susan is something that we carry spring, summer, and even into fall because we know it's a tried and true perennial. And it's going to give you a lot of value because it's easy to grow in a lot of different places and tons of blooms. So sometimes you got to look a little bit further than just what's in flower. And Black-Eyed Susan is a great one. And also the Shasta Daisies. Shasta Daisy, Becky's Shasta Daisy, that's what this one is. Lots and lots of different sizes in the daisies. Shasta Daisy is a great one. Lots and lots of flowers. Typically, again, another plant that you're going to see in a garden center that is rarely ever going to be in bloom. Sometimes we'll get them in bloom, but a lot of times you got to kind of, wait for them to come. But a lot of times people will get them just like this. I mean, this is a great looking plant. It's going to be blooming in no time because it's getting that size. But Shasta Daisies are great because they are a little bit naturalizing, which means they can really fill up some space. They get this nice kind of dome habit to them when they're grown individually, but they grow great in clusters and work well with a lot of other plants. And you get those nice white blooms with those yellow centers and a nice long stem. All you got to do is just basically take some of the leaf off if you want to, and you got a great cut flower. So Shasta Daisies are a really, really good one. Alstroemeria. Alstroemeria is super popular. I mean, you see this in a ton of florist arrangements. Alstroemeria is one of probably the most used cut flowers in florist and in flower arrangements because you get this great cluster of flowers on one stem. So I could go in and cut this one stem, goes almost all the way down to the bottom. I've got about 12 inches of stem and these great dark glossy green leaves, which are absolutely awesome. And these are another one that you can get a little bit early. So let's see if I can show you over here. This right here, this branch right here that's got these buds. So I could cut this now and these are gonna open up and I'm gonna get a lot more longevity out of my cut flowers. So that's why I always say that tip of making sure to tier your garden, making sure to inspect your plants. Cut flower gardens should be visited once a week. Garden centers should be visited once a month. And that way you can kind of see what's happening. Make sure to tier your garden so you can see. Alstroemeria is great because they don't get huge and they only get about probably 14 to 16 inches. I think that's about right. Some varieties are different. Let's see, this one is, 18 to 24 inches tall. So 1 to 2 feet, so it's a great kind of tiered, kind of mid-range size for a perennial that comes back year after year. And these come in a ton of colors too. Yellows and whites and oranges and reds, and they have this great stripe pattern inside the petal. So I'll bring this a little bit closer so you can see it. Just absolutely stunning plant. Really, really pretty. And pretty easy to grow. And I love that foliage. And sometimes when you're working with cut flowers, you want no foliage. You just want that straight stem. And that's easy, you just take the leaves off. But sometimes you want some foliage, you want some green, you want some filler in there. And Alstroemeria is a great one because it's got a really, really nice dark glossy green leaf. Okay, let's see, what else do I have? Salvias. I love salvias. Now, salvias come in the annual and the perennial world. I absolutely love this one. This one's called Back to the Fuchsia. So this is from Proven Winners. It is an absolutely amazing one. But salvia is awesome because, again, those long shoots, it's kind of got that cut flower garden look to it, of course, and really, really easy. And again, one of those that you can get a little bit early and they'll still open up after you cut them. This is awesome, awesome. So let's see, I see Debbie had a question. I signed in late. What's the name of that flower? So salvia is this one. This one is probably what you're talking about. This is Alstroemeria. Alstroemeria is a great cut flower. But Debbie, you can always go back and watch this when we're done. It's live right now, but as soon as we get done, we'll get it posted so you can always go back and watch it. I love the, okay, so Anita said thank you. Okay, well thank you, Anita. I'm glad you're enjoying this. So salvia is an awesome one, and there's tons and tons of colors of salvias. Now Veronica is another one that is a great perennial for cut flowers. I don't have any Veronica right now to show you, but Veronica is a great one. Very, very kind of seasonal, so you're kind of gonna get it and then it's gonna be gone. But salvias we keep, throughout the entire year, or I should say throughout the entire blooming season, spring, summer, into fall, and huge array of colors nowadays. This is kind of that new one. It's kind of fuchsia. I almost call it a true pink, but really, really pretty. You can get these, of course, in purples, blues, whites. Salvias are awesome, and you can even get some really pretty annual varieties. So let's see, I think I've grabbed an annual one. Yeah, here we go. So this, of course, is our basic blue salvia, but you can see how pretty that is. Really, really nice. Oh, I should have not done that. Let's see, I've got this branch here that broke off. Well, it did kind of break. I was going to show you that it's real easy just to kind of get that nice long stem. If we just break off some of these leaves here, you get this really, really nice long stem, but I broke off the flower too. But salvia's got these nice, great long stems, and they're pretty quick growing, and they're repeat bloomers. So they just keep on blooming, which is why I love them, and just so many different shades. Kind of reminds me of lavender a little bit, which I will talk about lavender as well, and rosemary. But salvia is a great one because the bud is tight. You can get it while it's tightly budded. Really great example right here is this guy right here. So you can see it's starting to open up on the bottom and the top still has to open. So you got this great opportunity to enjoy this bloom for a long time and on a really, really nice long stem. And again, I always kind of bring this up as a great tip. This is a great point to bring up now. Most plants, when you prune, actually will grow a little bit faster. So if you prune this back, it'll grow a little bit bigger and a little bit faster and produce more blooms a little bit quicker. Every plant blooms for a reason. It blooms to seed, to reproduce. Most flowers nowadays, or a lot of the ones that we grow for bloom power, almost create no seed. So they just keep on blooming right over top of each other, so you don't really have to mess with it too much. But deadheading is important, and what we're doing with a cut flower garden is basically, eliminating the need for deadheading, because we're gonna deadhead before we even get to a deadhead. We're gonna bloom, we're gonna cut flowers, which means you are gonna get more and more blooms, and you'll learn over time about where to cut, how to cut. Again, always cut on an angle. It really helps the plant, because if you cut straight, then water and moisture can get into that open wound, and it might not heal very well. But always cut on an angle, so if droplets of water fall, they can slide off that angle. And also, I always say cut a little bit further down. If I just take this bloom right here, and that's all I take is just this little top right here. Let me put this a little bit closer so you can see. So if I just take this bloom right here, let's see, here we go. And I just cut it right here. So what's gonna happen is, yes, I am gonna get these little buds off here, these little side buds, but they're not gonna be very big. They're not gonna be very impactful. But if I take this whole shoot and I cut it down into here, eliminate a lot of this other stuff, then I'm gonna get a huge bloom. All the power is gonna go to that, and then the new shoots that come out are gonna be even bigger. So you get a lot bigger new growth coming off of a slightly deeper cut. It's a really, really good point whenever I talk about rose pruning. It's a really, really important thing to kind of not, just cut that little bloom off and then leave a little stem, because the weaker the wood, the weaker the new growth. So cut down into a little bit of deeper wood and you'll get a nice big burst of growth. Okay, let's see, what else do I have for full sun in the perennial world? Oh, well, this is a good little segue here that I can do. This is Crocosmia. Some people might call it Crocosmia, but a really, really nice plant. Really great long stems. In fact, if you saw my sun plants there, see that orange plant up there in the corner? That's Crocosmia. And it's really, really nice. I love the foliage. It's just a great looking plant, and it gives a good size. So when we talk about, again, this tiered effect, these can get 3 to 4 feet high, and just huge archful branching, really, really nice plant. And it actually can be grown from bulb. So that is a great time to segue to bulbs. Bulbs are a great option. So you can buy Crocosmia in bulbs. You can buy lilies in bulbs. Look at that guy. Look at how big that is. This actually is starting to kind of grow here and needs to go in the ground pretty soon. But this is a Cape lily. So you can see that. And again, bulbs you can get in the spring for summer blooms, and then you can buy them again in the fall for spring blooms. So 2 different types of the year, and a lot of people come in and ask for daffodils and tulips throughout the year. You can only get them really in the fall season. That September, October, November time frame is when you want to plant your tulips and daffodils, and they make great cut flowers. And especially when there's nothing really else blooming, is in that kind of February time frame and you want some color, you want to bring in some flowers from the outside, daffodils are one of the best. And there's even more. There's Liatris, which is another really good one. See, I think I grabbed a Liatris, yep. So Liatris is a really popular cut flower, because again, long spikes, grassy foliage, long spikes of blooms, really, really nice one. So, and they can last a long time. So Liatris is a good one, Crocosmia is a good one, and I just love that color, that orange color on that archful branch. So these are really nice. You can get them growing like this, or you can buy bulbs. And so it's a good thing to always kind of look at the bulb selection. You can even do seeds. I didn't grab any packets of seeds, but of course there's tons and tons of things that you can use, from seed to plant to cut flower. So you got lots and lots of choices. Let's see, I've also got coneflowers. So coneflowers are a great one. I really like coneflowers because nowadays some of the varieties are actually blooming where they actually change. I mean, all blooms will change, but this one will actually kind of get prettier as it goes, or different, I should say. So you can see that normal coneflower at the top. This is a yellow one. This one's called Sunny Days Lemon Coneflower by Monrovia. Really, really nice bloom with that bright kind of chartreuse yellow or green inside. But then watch what it does here. It gets this kind of pom-pom look here, which is really, really cool. So as that flower ages, you get this really nice look. And as these plants get bigger, the stems will get a little bit longer. So, but you can see, just look at this one stem right here. Really long shoot. I can take this all the way down into here. I can eliminate the leaves or keep them, and I've got this great bloom that I can use in a cut flower. And as these plants get bigger, somewhere right around that 1 to 2 foot high and wide side, then the more and more blooms. And coneflowers are great because not only do they help the pollinators, but they keep on blooming throughout the summer. All you got to do is go in there and just use those cut flowers. So lots and lots of colors too. I mean, oranges and reds and whites and yellows, and a huge collection. And these are one that you always kind of need to come back to the garden center to see, because we get them throughout the season. So it's kind of, again, the ebbs and flows. Even your year or your spring, summer into fall bloomers really kind of have seasonality, meaning you got to come in and kind of check us out to see what we've got that's new. Of course, carnations, which is Dianthus. Carnations are one of the most popular cut flowers, just that perfect little carnation bloom. And Dianthus is a great way to get carnations because you can get a lot of them. And I love, again, anytime you can get clusters of flowers all on one stem. So if I take, this stem, for example, right here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 buds on this one stem right here. So I can take this all the way down, I can cut it off, and I've got all of these flowers that are going to open up. And if you get it a little bit early, then you get to experience the whole opening and closing of your bloom throughout that entire cut time frame. So Dianthus is a great one, and it's a great, again, really nice tiered plant. It's one of those lower plants, comes back reliably year after year with this great blue foliage. It makes a great landscape plant, but an amazing cut flower. A carnation, which is Dianthus. Of course, another bulb, but also a great one. And I mentioned lilies there earlier with the bulbs, the lily bulbs. But calla lilies are absolutely amazing. Of course, we've probably all bought these cut flowers before, but you can grow calla lilies. In fact, this is a perennial variety, comes back year after year. Really gorgeous blooms, lots of different colors. Again, you've got your whites, your lavenders, your yellows, and I love the foliage too. So check out this foliage if you can see it here. See that speckled pattern there? So really a great kind of filler too. You know, sometimes we're looking for that greenery. I've got a couple suggestions here that I'll get to at the end of greenery, but this is really, really nice greenery with that kind of white speckled pattern. And then of course you get the blooms to match. So really, really nice. Calla lilies are an excellent option. And actually you can take a little bit of shade too. So really, really not a bad, you know, sun to even a little bit of part shade. Let's see, did I get everything that I kind of grabbed? Oh, I mentioned lavender. Lavender and rosemary. I grabbed one lavender. But lavender or rosemary, one, of course, you always think of greenery when you think of lavender or rosemary. A lot of us don't think about the blooms so much, although lavender does bloom pretty profusely, and so does rosemary. But lavender gets these great blooms on this long shoot, so again, another nice cut flower. But what I love about lavender or rosemary is they have two different uses. I mean, well, I guess you could say three. Not only can you cook with it, but you can use it for fragrance, but you can use it for that greenery filler. I mean, even when these aren't blooming, look at this silvery foliage. I mean, it's just absolutely stunning. Of course, lavenders come in all different colors of foliage, from blues to silvers to dark greens. And rosemary is mostly in that green to bluish green. But that fragrance that you get, because when you cut it, that's where you get the fragrance. So when you cut it and you put it in your floral arrangements, it's absolutely stunning. Not only does it break up kind of a different look, add some little filler, some little blooms, but also it adds that fragrance, which is sometimes hard to get in a floral arrangement, is some sort of scent from it. So really, really nice one. Lavender and rosemary are great options. Some of the annuals that I grabbed for blooms, this is actually kind of new to me. This one's called Joey. It is a pink mula mula. Kind of reminds me of Gomphrena, which is, I actually thought it was a Gomphrena. So I'll show you the Gomphrena at the same time. These are awesome little plants. I mean, great little cut flowers. A lot of times when we're doing, you know, floral arrangements or our bouquet or our vase, we always are looking for just a little something. Maybe it's not the show-stopping flower. Maybe it's not the rose. It's not the hydrangea. It's not the Alstroemeria. It's not our big bloom. We're just looking for something in there to cut it up, to break it up, to add a little bit of different texture and a different look. And these are great little annuals, super easy to grow. I think they get pretty tall. So let's see, I want to say about 12 to 15 inches. That's just spacing. I think they get a little bit taller. I want to say these get somewhere around that 24-inch range when I've seen them growing. Now I know Gomphrena. Gomphrena gets big, and this one's one of my favorites. This one's called Gomphrena Pink Trufolia. So really, really nice one. This one's cool because, again, that small little bloom. Sometimes you'll get clusters of them, but a lot of times you'll just get them on this nice long stem, so I can go and cut it off. And again, it's not the showstopper. It's not the entire bouquet, probably. You're not gonna cut, I mean, you can get a ton of these flowers off of this and you make an entire bouquet out of it, but it's a great little pop of color, kind of sprays, shoots, little pieces here and there that pop out, and I love that pink. And what's cool about Gomphrena, and even the Mula Mula, is they're very easy to grow. Now they are annuals in our area, they won't come back in the Hampton Roads area, but they're easy to grow and they just kick blooms. And Gomphrena gets big. Gomphrena can get somewhere around 24 to 48 inches, so somewhere from 2 to 4 feet. Now, if you're using it for cut flowers, you're gonna kind of keep it cut back. It might not get as big on you, but it is an awesome one, super drought tolerant too, and just kicks blooms all summer long, even into the frost. So really, really nice one, Gomphrena and the Mula Mula. So really, really cool plants. Great little fillers. So I don't really classify that as my greenery per se, but I do classify it as a kind of cool little filler bloom that sometimes we need. Let's see, what else do I have? I got Geum, really nice. Look at this. So I always think of like a cut flower garden as being a little bit of a wildflower garden. I've got some images I'm going to show you here at the end that maybe get you a little inspired. Not a ton, just a few. But I love Geums because they have these really cool kind of long wispy stems here, which again are another one of those small blooms, not the steal the show bloom, but the small bloom that is great to pop in and out of your floral arrangements, really, really easy to grow. And one of the best, it just keeps on kicking blooms. And again, orange is sometimes hard to find. I know it seems like I've got lots of oranges here. I got lucky today, but GM's a great one. You know, I also think of, let's see, what was that? I was thinking of it, oh, the whirlwinds, guara. So guara, another good one for that little bloom, you know, in mass in the landscape, they look amazing, but sometimes you need just a little bit of filler in your floral arrangements, and these make great ones. Awesome in the landscape, but also amazing in floral arrangements. Again, not your big, huge blooms, but they're gonna add a lot of texture and a lot of filler and a lot of, you know, different kind of look. So you can really kind of cut up the monotony of just doing one type of bloom. All right, so I think I've covered, oh, well, dahlias. I didn't mention dahlias. Dahlias are a funny one because they kind of fall into three of the categories we've talked about: perennials, bulbs, and annuals. And there's lots and lots of choices of dahlias. And what I love about dahlias is the blooms are cheerful. You can get dinner plate dahlias that are dinner plate size, hence the name, but you get them down to these small little dahlias that are great little annuals. Now just be careful, you always want to watch your temperature ranges on dahlias because a lot of them are annuals and then there's some that are perennials. And perennials typically are some of the better cut flowers because they're going to get longer stems, they're going to be bigger plants though too. So lots and lots of diversity in your dahlias, zinnias. Let's see, is there anything else on my list that I kind of forgot? I think I got everything. The list is massive. For sun plants, that's where you're going to get a majority of them. You know, a lot of your cut flowers are going to come from the sun, from growing in the full sun area of your yard. Now, there are some shade plant options, and some of my favorites are in the shade. So you can see here on these pictures, I've got hydrangeas, of course, peonies, amazing, and hellebores. Great, great options. And there's a lot of options in the shade. Again, another one of those that are a little bit more on the seasonality, and actually some great greenery that you can get in the shade, which we're going to talk about after we talk about the shade plants. I won't spend as much time on the shade plants because it's not as big of a list. Let's see, is there anything on my list that I don't have? So the only thing I didn't bring in that's on my list is bleeding heart. Bleeding heart is a great one. It's a spring bloomer. There's actually new varieties out there that actually are starting to kind of bloom throughout the season rather than just in the spring, because bleeding heart kind of blooms and then it's done. But it's a really, really good one for that early season bloom. But what I did grab was a stilbe. A stilbe I absolutely love. Really great, another one of those small flowers that are kind of almost foamy-like. So you always see that in flower arrangements. You always see that kind of foamy flower, very light, kind of easy one like baby's breath or spirea, bridal wreath spirea. There's lots and lots of different choices for that little white kind of filler bloom, but a stilbe is a great one. Short-lived in bloom time though, unfortunately. But what's also great about a stilbe is you get two great things in a stilbe. You get the leaf, the foliage as well, which is very, very fern-like. And it's just a gorgeous plant in the landscape, but it's absolutely awesome. Yep, so Anita said delphiniums, awesome as well. Baptisias, I mean, man, the list goes on and on. There's so many, Anita, that I couldn't mention them all. But it's always good to just kind of, think outside the box. And I just kind of wanted to show you some and get your wheels turning. So good option. Delphiniums are another one. So a stilbe is a really, really nice one because you get two things. You get the foliage, which is a great kind of filler greenery because it's kind of got that almost Nandina look, but also a fern kind of look. But then you get these great blooms that bloom in the kind of mid-spring, maybe late-ish spring time frame that are great little filler blooms. So a stilbe is a really, really nice one and works great in the shade and is an amazing landscape plant. Really, really looks great in the landscape. Of course, peonies. I'm not going to move this guy, but this is just absolutely stunning. And there are huge advances in the peony world. Okay, let's go through the three types of peonies while we're on it for just real quick reference. So there's herbaceous peonies. Herbaceous peonies are what we're probably all most used to. Smaller blooms, but lots of them. Very easy plant to grow. The downfall of herbaceous peonies is typically they bloom and they go crazy with blooms and you got tons of them and then they're done. And that's it for the rest of the year, and there's nothing else. And they tend to all bloom around the same time. You don't even get like buds here and there. So you can get like some one week and some the next week and some the week after and some the week after. It's like all in one, and then it's done. So, but they are getting better and better, and the varieties are starting to change so that you're getting a little bit more bloom seasonality, or more length of bloom time with some of the peonies. The herbaceous peonies. Now there's tree peonies. Tree peonies, which I meant to grab a box. I think I had some, but we carry them a lot of times in bulbs, so they kind of look like this, you know, just like this daylily box, and there's a little tuber in there, a little rootstock, and tree peonies are absolutely amazing. The downfall of tree peonies, huge blooms, but you only get about 2 or 3 in a season. I mean, I've seen people get more, but extremely slow growing, takes a long time to get there. And so this guy is called an Ito peony. And Ito was actually a breeder, and he worked his entire life to, maybe not his entire life, but a large portion of his time breeding to cross a tree peony and a herbaceous peony. And so what he discovers that it can be done, and you get the best of both worlds. So you get the reliability of the herbaceous peony on lots of blooms, and you get the bigger bloom size and the more diverse colors and looks of the tree peony. So you get the bloom of a tree peony on the reliability of a herbaceous peony. And that's what's really cool about this guy, is the Ito peony is absolutely amazing. Lots and lots of different colors. We carry a lot of the yellows, and this kind of really kind of cool looking kind of pink color is really, really amazing. But regardless of what peony you get, they make great cut flowers. They're awesome, and they grow really, really well in the shade. They can actually grow a little bit in the sun too, so I kind of put it in that area of you want to give it some relief from the full sun. So probably, you know, what would be ideal is probably shade from 3 on. So say like 3 p.m. to, you know, sundown. That would be great, perfect shade for it. But it can take, you know, all afternoon shade, so you can grow in the same arena as your hydrangeas, which is the next one I want to talk about. Hydrangeas are absolutely amazing. Let's see, I think I had one down here, because this is a little bit of for show hydrangea. This is, you know, your endless summer, and this is absolutely awesome. This one's a new one. I can't remember if it was new last year or 2 years ago, but it's called Bloomstruck. Really kind of cool, you know, different looking bloom on it. And what I love about this one is, if you can see inside there, the stem color is really, really dark. I know it's not showing up on camera, but in person, it is almost like a dark purple hue on the stem. And so again, you get that kind of color of the stem, and of course the reliability of an endless summer hydrangea. Bloomstruck is what this one's called. There's tons of varieties in the endless summers. There's the original, there's Bloomstruck, there's a couple different ones, I can't remember all the names. But they are absolutely amazing because they just keep on blooming. A lot of old-fashioned hydrangeas do kind of the same thing as that peony, right? They big bloom set and kind of fizzle out and kind of done. The nice thing about hydrangeas is at least the blooms last a long time, and they can be dried and they can be used for different purposes. So they got a lot more use than probably just a regular herbaceous peony. But hydrangeas are absolutely awesome. Now, because of the cool weather that we're experiencing right now, I don't have a lot of blooms on our regular garden hydrangeas, which we've got a huge assortment, because you think of like those limelight hydrangeas. So I grabbed this one, and this one's really more of a florist hydrangea. Doesn't mean it's not a hydrangea, it is. These were just grown inside, so make great gifts, but also helps me tell you and put on the show of a hydrangea. Hydrangeas are one of my favorite cut flowers. They're just classic, and they're easy. You can change the colors. You can go from blues to whites. You can change it on one plant. You can get even the purples. You can get blues, pinks, whites, purples, multiple colors in one bloom. What I like to do is I do it with my hydrangea. I've got one big one that's a big mop head like this. I like to throw a little bit of lime on one side, so it kind of sweetens the soil, brings it more to that pink side, while the rest are blue, and then in the middle of the bush it kind of has a little bit of a multicolor. So you can play with them, you can do a lot of different things with them. You also get that nice long stem with them. They're easy to cut, they last a long time in a vase. We all know hydrangeas are one of the best, and they're easy to grow, and I love them. So, and they grow in the shade. I mean, you can't beat that. A shade plant that gets big, produces lots of blooms, and are a great cut flower. So hydrangeas are definitely on the top tier of my list of must-haves for a cut flower garden. What else do we have? I mentioned hydrangeas. Oh, hellebores. So hellebores are another cool one. one of those plants that are becoming really, really, really popular because they can grow in a lot of different kind of soil types and in some even tough conditions in the shade. You know, I think a lot of us probably have big old trees that can suck up a ton of moisture, and it's really hard to grow anything underneath them, but Hellebores or Lenten rose are one of my absolute favorites. They're very, very durable plants, very, very tough, long-lived, and great flowers, and a little bit different looking flower. So now these are older flowers, so these are kind of done blooming. Typically they would have more of this kind of pinkish hue on them, but they come in whites, they come in pinks, they come in dark blacks almost. You get lots and lots of different colors with them. And what I love about them is even the seeds, what I would call this is kind of like their seed phase. They don't actually produce a viable seed these days, but these blooms that still look like blooms are really not blooms anymore, and they're super easy to cut, and they last a long time in dried arrangements, but also in just nice floral arrangements. It's a great filler, smaller blooms. The only downfall of Hellebores or Lenten rose is a lot of times the blooms kind of hang a little bit. I still think the back of the bloom is still pretty. It's a really nice kind of burgundy color right now, but they change throughout the season as well. But most new varieties of Hellebores or Lenten rose are actually creating ones that the faces stay up a little bit more. So you're actually seeing a little bit more of this, where you can see that face is just staying straight up. And so that's really cool. Also, another good one for some foliage use. I grabbed this one because it's got that really kind of cool, almost variegated foliage. Look at that. I mean, that is stunning. Looks awesome in the landscape, but also great for cut foliage and of course cut blooms. And these things can put on some size over the years. So I know you probably would say, well, what would I can't cut that leaf off because it needs it. Well, it will produce new leaves. In fact, I've seen new growth coming from down here at the bottom. Look at that, a new little shoot right here. So we've got more foliage that's coming, and if I need a couple leaves, it's okay, but especially once my plant gets some age on it. So once I've had this for 2 or 3 years and it's nice, 24 inches wide, I can go in and cut some foliage out, and I know I'm not gonna harm the plant. Yes, the plant needs the foliage to survive, to produce food for itself, but taking a couple leaves here and there, not bad, especially if we need it for an arrangement, and it'll look great. So Hellebores are a great one for the shade, and really tough shade conditions, this is a great one. Another good one for shade is Heuchera or coral bells. And one of my favorite plants because it's evergreen, it's pretty easy to grow, and it grows in the shade. But again, we're always looking for that little foamy kind of flower. And look at this stem, you get this nice long stem, goes all the way down. So I can get almost on just this pot grown one, I mean just in this container grown, young plant, pretty young plant, I can get this nice, 24-inch long stem with this kind of foamy white flower. They don't last forever, but they're really, really good for fillers and for putting in arrangements where you got your blooms maybe in this area, but you want a little bit of spiky kind of light kind of throw off, kind of ease of just having think of like a hydrangea container with nothing but hydrangeas in it, but then you pop a couple of these in through the top of it, and you've got this nice little height that's not stealing the show. So really, really nice ones, and there's tons and tons of varieties. A lot of people actually don't like the blooms, and they grow them for just the foliage, which is fine. But if you're using a cut flower garden and you got lots of shade, this is awesome. So it's really, really nice to have some Heucheras around, not only because they're great landscape plants, but because you get this really cool foamy bloom that's really nice for the cut flower arrangement. All right, so now I think that's kind of it. I mean, there's a couple other ones. I'm sure I'm missing plenty of them. But I mean, a lot of people will use hostas sometimes. But I do want to get into, before I go too long, the greenery. And greenery, of course, is another good one because we could be talking about year-round here now. So I mean, we start to talk about floral arrangements or greenery arrangements at Christmas time. Lots and lots of things there when we get into like the spruces and the conifers and the evergreens. Not going to talk about that today, but I do want to talk about some of the great greeneries that you can use to fill up your containers. So when you're filling up your floral arrangements, flowers are great, but a lot of times you need something in there to make it kind of add some texture, break up the monotony, but also add that texture and that color. You can get colors with them, you can get different looks with them, and so greenery is a super, super important thing. Of course, you can see the ferns there. Ferns are awesome. I'll talk about that a little bit. That other image is a poet's laurel. I'll show you that up close and personal. Eucalyptus. I'm actually going to show you a Solomon seal as well. So let's show you some of those because I love to talk about greenery because it's easy. It's super easy. A lot of them grow in the shade, like ferns. So I could have grabbed just, your regular basic fern like I have in that image. So, I could grab that. Those are easy. You just go and you pluck off the stem and then you can just kind of shave it down. But I wanted to be able to show it to you too. So I grabbed this asparagus fern because I love these. Asparagus fern are great because they're kind of wild looking. They're great in containers to kind of add a filler. So if you're making like a mixed, container with, some annual plants, maybe some, impatiens or a hydrangea or lots of different things that you can do in the shade. But you get these long kind of wispy pieces of growth, and these are great for containers. Now be careful. Another tip might be to have gloves when working with roses, but also the asparagus ferns have little tiny thorns in there. They're not real hard, they're not real sharp, so I'm gonna risk it here. I'll keep this here just so you can see it. But this asparagus fern, look at that. I mean, that is the perfect little piece of greenery for a flower arrangement. And all I have to do is go and just kind of strip off some of this. And that is just the perfect little filler to add into any container. Put this little chartreuse lime green fern sprig with any bloom and it's gonna look absolutely amazing. So asparagus fern is one of my favorites for that, but there's tons and tons of ferns. I mean, you probably aren't gonna do it with like a macho fern or a Kimberly Queen fern or even your hanging Boston fern, but some of your autumn ferns or your, so I'm thinking tassel fern or holly fern. Holly fern's a great one, but asparagus fern is awesome. There's also the foxtail fern, which is like asparagus, but it's a little bit tighter. Really, really cool. But a lot of times we're looking for that greenery to pop into a container. This is really, really easy, or into a flower arrangement. Then asparagus fern is one of my top winners for sure. And there's lots and lots of ferns to use. So for the shade, ferns grow great. You can get some perennial ferns, which will come back year after year, but you can also buy these annual ferns that are really, really cool as well. So what else do I have? Poet's laurel. I mentioned poet's laurel is a great one for shade as well. See if I can do this without breaking it. What I love about poet's laurel is the arch. Not only is it variegated and it's got that awesome, lovely green leaf, it actually blooms with a little white flower, so you can see those little things hanging down from the bottom. Some people actually sometimes mistake them for insect eggs, but these are the blooms and they're actually fragrant. So if you cut it for the fragrance, you're gonna get a little bit of fragrance from it. I cut it for the greenery. I absolutely love it. Really cool because of that arch. So a lot of times when we're working in a florist arrangement, we're trying to get something to kind of hang out and kind of fill the void. Maybe our blooms are really rigid and they're in the center and I need something different in there, then this is a good one. So poet's laurel is not poet's laurel, Solomon seal. I always get the two confused. Solomon seal is a great one. Naturalizing, it's a perennial, so it comes back year after year, and you get that great variegation and that great arch. They almost always arch a little bit, each branch. And really, really easy to use. You can just cut them, they come back year after year, they're very reliable, and a really easy one to grow. And another great one for the shade, which, a lot of us have shade, and shade is a great spot to use some of these filler plants. Let's see, the poet's laurel. So I got a big one, just so I can show you. Love poet's laurel. Poet's laurel is awesome. So you won't see us really carry any of like the flowering laurels. So you think of like some of the laurels that you see out in the mountains of Virginia, a native plant. A lot of those get a fungus called shot hole fungus. So you typically won't see that type of laurel anymore. But the poet's laurel is absolutely awesome. It's just green. Yes, it does bloom. It actually will get little tiny berries on it. I don't know if you can see them, but they're just tiny little berries on here. And these will actually turn red in the winter. So a lot of people love these for the arrangements that they might do around Christmas time, but I just love that dark, glossy green leaf and the nice long stem. So really, really nice one. I grabbed this big one so that again, I could kind of do a cutting here for you and just show you. So I can go all the way down in here, down to the bottom. Just do a little cut there. And we'll move this off to the side. And then I can show you, look at that nice long stem. So again, a great piece of greenery, great for filler, lots of arch in it as well. We can strip off some of the bottom here We don't have to worry about that. And it lasts a long time, which is great. So you can actually cut it, maybe just stick it in a vase by itself and use it for, I don't know, I've had some last up to 3 or 4 weeks almost in a vase, looking still good. So, just change the water every once in a while, and it's really, really nice. Great glossy green leaf. Almost fern-like, Nandina-like, just open. A lot of times you don't want something super, super bushy in your floral arrangements. You just need a little bit of greenery to pop in and out. So this is a great one. Poet's Laurel, really, really easy one. Can grow in shade. Actually can take a little bit of sun, but grows best in some shade. And then of course, everybody's favorite is the eucalyptus, the silver eucalyptus. So eucalyptus, I will be honest, is hard to come by these days. So when we have it, get as much as you want of it. It grows fast. It can almost grow into a tree. But it's pretty easy to grow. Now, a hard winter could kill this to the ground and it might not come back, but that's pretty rare. We sell it as a perennial. It should come back pretty reliably. Let's see if this one is, if it's got its hardiness zone on it. I don't think it does, but pretty much usually, I mean, we're right on the borderline of its hardiness. So some winters, if they're really, really bad, you might lose the top. But if you cut it down at the base, let it come back from the ground, from the rootstock, it should. It'll probably be a little bit bushier. If you're trying to grow it as a tree, you just stake it and you just have to start pruning it as a tree. But it grows pretty quick, which is why it's such a widely used greenery in florist arrangements and in Christmas decor and for wreath making. It dries very easily. So really, really nice one, eucalyptus. We've got some now. I can't guarantee we will always have it. It is a hard one to come by. But eucalyptus is highly sought after. Really, really nice, and it adds that kind of silvery bluish green foliage. So eucalyptus, there's a lot of different varieties out there, but this is what we would call just your regular silver eucalyptus. And it's a great plant for the greenery, and because it comes back year after year and it's evergreen. I mean, it should be evergreen. If we get really, really cold winters here in the Hampton Roads area, you might lose a little bit of it, but they should come back pretty reliably. I've got one in my neighborhood, and I'm on the peninsula in Newport News, and they've had it for at least 4 or 5 years. So it looks great, and they can get pretty big. But you can also cut them down, use up that greenery, it'll grow right back. So kind of a cool looking plant. Great for the landscape, but also awesome for the greenery. And that's just to name a few. Again, those are just a few of the greenery types of plants that you can use. So real quickly, as I wrap up here, let me make sure I've answered all the questions. I think Deborah said, hi, do you have trumpet hummingbird? Do you have the trumpet hummingbird conifer? I don't think I do. I've got some trumpet vine, which is a climbing vine for hummingbirds, but I don't know that I have the conifer. But it also says, see you soon, so I hope you're coming down soon. And then let's see. RM just said, I think you talked me into a hydrangea. You gotta have a hydrangea. And there's so many different forms. I mean, I could show you pictures of all the different hydrangeas. I love the white limelight hydrangeas with that panicle shaped bloom. The oak leaf hydrangeas are absolutely stunning. Man, I wish, I'm gonna try and build a collection of hydrangeas over the years. I love them. Mop heads, lace caps. I mean, the list goes on and on. You'll go crazy with hydrangeas and you'll get tons and tons of cut flowers. And the new ones bloom repeatedly throughout the year, so you're not gonna get just that big bloom set and it's done. So RM, I think you'll love a hydrangea, especially if you're planning on doing some cut flower arrangements. All right, couple images here, some inspiration, and also to kind of reinforce that tiered effect. So again, not all of these are cut flowers. I just kind of grab these images so you can kind of get an idea of what I mean by this tiered effect. Smaller plants in the front, working up to larger plants in the back, so you can always see what is in bloom or what's coming into bloom. So this is another great image of, bulbs used with some ground cover, used with different types of annuals and perennials mixed together. And this is kind of what I typically think of when I think of a cut flower garden. I think of a little bit more of the, kind of cottage style garden. So a little bit of mixture of plants. What I also love about cut flower gardens is it doesn't have to be like a typical landscape design, where typically in a landscape design, I'm doing 3s, 5s, 7s to do mass impact. With a cut flower garden, if you're just looking for a little space, you can put one of every plant that you like in there. And then you play with the sizes. You can still make it look pretty, so you take a Crocosmia or a Hydrangea or a rose that gets big and put that as your base plant, get another couple big plants in there, mix in that second tier, mix in the third tier down low, and you got yourself a really pretty garden that only has one of every plant maybe. Typically in a landscape design, you don't want to do onesies of everything. It gets chaotic to the eye. But in a cottage style garden or in a cut flower garden that is in a specific space, go for it. Plant one of everything and you'll love it. Anita said, I have a hard time finding hellebores. Do you ship? I wish we did. We don't. I'm sure there's probably some online store, but Anita, maybe if you're coming through our neck of the woods, we've got a huge collection. Hellebores are one of our favorite plants. We always have a big collection. We'll run a little low on them around the summer time frame, but then we pick back up around the October, November time frame. We keep them all through the winter. We absolutely love them. So I hope you can find them locally, but if not, maybe you'll get in our neck of the woods here one of these days. And again, quintessential cottage garden. You can see Liatris up there, that kind of spiky bloom with the little purple flowers. We've got some foxgloves, which aren't, or no, I think that's snapdragons. So snapdragons are in there, lots and lots of different types of balloons. And again, that's that kind of cottage garden cut flower feel. So these, again, were just some inspirational pictures just to kind of wrap us up and let you kind of think about what you might want to do in your yard. Mix them into your landscape. Add them to, take an area, a defined area, and make a cut flower garden. It's really, really a lot of fun. But if you don't have space, find a couple holes here and there in your landscape design and add something to it. You can even do it in containers. So if you're thinking about, doing this on a porch or a patio where you just want them in a bunch of containers, think of that French kind of cut flower garden market. Lots of terracotta pots, lots of fun. You can plant some annuals in some. You can plant some perennials in some. They will last a fair amount of time. You get a good sized pot, you can grow a hydrangea on a porch or a patio. So you got lots and lots of different options. We've got dwarf roses, huge amounts of options of what you can do in small spaces all the way up to incorporate them into your entire landscape. So lots and lots of choices. I hope you enjoyed this. I know I only brushed the surface of all the different types of plants that you can grow for a cut flower garden, but I think this gets you excited. Biggest tip, check out your local garden centers frequently throughout the years because every year, every month, every week, you can see something different that you didn't know about or that you didn't think about. And when it's blooming is when we carry a majority of it. And so when it's blooming, and that will help you with your seasonal, with your full season, your spring, summer, into fall season of keeping those blooms and your florist and your cut flower garden rolling all season long. I hope you all enjoyed this. I think I got everybody's questions answered. If I don't see any more, I think I got everybody. Then I hope everybody has a great day, and we will see you in a couple weeks. I hope everybody has a great day. Well, I'll see you next week. I'll be talking about my vegetable garden. But hope everybody's having a great day and hope to see you here. Oh wait, we got a question here. Can peonies be grown in containers? I live in an apartment and can't plant in the ground here. I love the one you showed. What's its name again? Also, can you oversee me transplanting my Makawa Yatsubusa I bring to the garden center? I bought it. You're great. So, all right. So, Kimberly, this is an Ito peony. Let me go back to a full screen here so you can see. So this is an Ito peony. This one is actually, let's see if I can find the name. I can never remember the names. They're all different. There's yellows and there's pinks. But Ito peonies are really, really popular. I don't see... Oh, there it is. Okay, I do have the tag. So this one specifically is called Kiko, Adored Ito Peony. So Kiko, Keiko. But it is absolutely stunning. Ito peonies, yes, you could grow in a container. You would need a pretty sizable pot. As you can see right here, this is in a pretty big pot right now. I think you probably could keep it in this size pot for maybe another year or two, but I would go ahead and get in a bigger pot. For your herbaceous peonies, for sure. My mother-in-law grows just a regular herbaceous peony, has for, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years now, in a nice large ceramic pot. She's had it in the same pot year after year. It's very reliable, comes up and looks great and blooms. So your regular herbaceous peonies, yes, and even your Ito peonies, which get pretty good size, 3 feet high and wide, maybe 4 feet high and wide. You can grow those in a container. Anything in a container is going to dwarf it a little bit, which is perfectly fine. Anything in a container, you're going to have to feed a little bit more, so keep that in mind. Okay, so then your question about the Makawa Yatsubusa. So that's a Japanese maple. Transplanting it by bringing it into the garden center. So if you bring it into the garden center and you want us to transplant it into a different pot, yes, we can certainly do that. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. Makawa Yatsubusa is a smaller type of Japanese maple, and you can transplant that into a smaller container or into another container. If you're talking about transplanting it from a container into your landscape, then we don't do that per se. But we can help you do it very successfully and very easily. And what I mean by that is all you really need is some compost, some perlite, your soil, you mix it up, you plant it. But definitely if it's something that you need to come in and talk to us about, come in and talk to us, Kimberly, and we can help you with whatever that is with your Japanese maple that you need help with when transplanting. But I'm assuming you're talking about moving from one pot to another pot. Yes, we can certainly do that. And if you don't want to bring it in, we can definitely, if you come in, bring some pictures, we can talk you through how to do it yourself. It's pretty simple. All right, everybody. I hope everybody has a great day. I hope you all enjoyed this. And I had a lot of fun talking about growing a cut flower garden. I hope this all helped inspire you to get out there and do it yourself. So have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.